Let's start with your Chiefs. Because let me ask you this. Was this a bigger game? Was the result bigger for the Chiefs, the Colts, or the Patriots?
Well, I have a hard time finding a lot of losses on the Patriots schedule. So it's a big game for the Patriots because we did this analysis prior to the game. I think their first loss on average is like a game later than Kansas City's, and as it would happen, Kansas City did lose earlier. It's a huge game for the Colts. I think if you're the Colts, the question was always, could you win with Jacoby Brissett? And he made some mistakes tonight, but generally speaking, he played pretty well. Jacoby Brissett just doing enough, right?
Just barely.
Your defense scheming the heck out of things, right? Both safeties were out. Kenny Moore was out for a time. And running the football. I mean, Quentin Nelson's run blocking grade on the
Dude, he was ridiculous.
Unbelievable. And, Brissett didn't grade particularly well. But I think a lot of that was the interception. That was the only pass he threw over 20 yards downfield, the one that was intercepted by Matthew. He only completed one pass that traveled more than 10 yards down the field. But he did enough, right? And then it was really just taking advantage of the Chiefs' weakness, which is the fact that they're very soft defensively. No matter how they change the scheme, they have covered better this year, I think. But they were soft, and the Colts played the game that they wanted to play. They made decision after decision after decision that was sound, and they walked into one of the tougher home field advantages in the NFL, and they won.
I thought you were going to say the Chiefs' weakness that they took advantage of was the left ankle of Pat Mahomes, because that's a real thing. That was the real weakness. The Colts played much better in coverage, certainly, than we expected. There weren't these immediate open throws, right? So one of the things that happened with Mahomes against the Lions was that he had to spend a lot of time in the pocket because guys weren't just coming open. Both of the halves against the Lions, he had more than 10 dropbacks where he held onto the ball for more than 3 seconds. That's a lot, all right? And then we saw that happen again in this game. The difference was that once he hurt his ankle, he wasn't able to kill people after that point in time. So I think we saw the limit of Andy Reid's scheming when all of a sudden Travis Kelce has a bad game.
Their two top receivers are injured.
You don't have Sammy Watkins, and you don't have Tyreek Hill. And then the fallback there is to say, okay, well, look, our defense isn't going to stop anybody. So Pat Mahomes, you're the only hope here. Yeah. And that was the limit, I thought, of the Chiefs. So for that reason, I don't think it's that big of a loss for the Chiefs. I sort of figured the next series of Kansas City, New England was going to take place in New England in the playoffs. That felt the way it was going to be. So I don't think this is that big of a loss for the Chiefs. Huge for the Colts, though.
Yeah, and the Chiefs also without left tackle Eric Fisher. Cameron Irving tonight gave up 3 sacks, 3 hurries, and a hit. You bring up a great...
Shouldn't he have picked up Houston on that 4th down? Someone should have.
As somebody who's been on the backside of that run play a million times, you just cut the guy to the ground and you probably make the block. But interesting that the Chiefs had no interest in running the football the entire night, and on the biggest play of the game, run the ball up the middle. It was a really strange game. When I look, the Chiefs in the Mahomes era had never scored fewer than 26 points. They got half of that tonight in the 13. And frankly, the Colts, if they don't throw a red zone intercept or a deep in the Chiefs territory interception, this game's worse, right, for Kansas City. But you bring up a great point about Mahomes, because Mahomes made plays. I mean, frankly, like, he had a touchdown. He averaged over 10.5 yards per pass attempt when pressured, but he only completed 50% of those passes. He was sacked 4 times, and without his customary movability, he's not a huge scrambler or anything, but he has just enough mobility to massage his own pressure rate to the point where the Cameron Irving being in there wasn't a huge deal. The fact that their three interior guys aren't particularly good didn't matter. And then when he doesn't have his customary moving around the pocket, he's far more like, his pressure rates are far more like the Mariotas of the world than they are about the Mahomeses of the world.
Please, that name, don't mention it.
Yeah.
When your best receiver on the night is Byron Pringle,
Yeah, chipping away at the defense.
That probably tells you you've got a problem. Travis Kelce, Mahomes to Kelce has been the number one quarterback to tight end target over the past year plus, and it's not really close. And throwing to Kelce, 4 for 10 for 70 yards. Kelce had to drop 65 passer rating. That can't be what you get out of Travis Kelce against the Colts, who, by the way, have allowed more yards to tight ends than any team in the NFL over the past year plus. So you expected them to take advantage of that.
Without Darius Leonard playing tonight.
Yeah, you expect them to take advantage of that. They did not. A guy like Pierre Desir, who's fine in coverage, right? He's not a top 10 corner by any stretch of the imagination. They threw in his coverage 10 times, got 4 completions. So it's like these guys are kind of stepping up and playing better than I think. But this is what you want out of your head coaching hire in Frank Reich. There are a lot of coaches that come into this situation, get all of these breaks that the Colts got, and make nothing of it. Mm-hmm. And instead, his team was ready to play. There were a lot of penalties in this game on the Chiefs.
Yeah, and not a ton on.
The Colts were disciplined. They understood what they had to do to win the game, right? They went for it on 4th down a few times. They knew they had to win in the run game, and they did so like demonstrably. So they were able to take advantage of that. So I think it's huge.
Here's something to point out. I know, a lot of folks, people we respect, people we like, said this, Colts should tank, right? And the Colts have, the type of quarterback that might be a good quarterback for the tank. But they had built their roster really well, right? I mean, I think our friend Brad from Over the Cap tweeted out basically the fewest percentage of snaps played by upcoming free agents, and it was the Colts, right? So the Colts have the majority of their players locked up over the next few years. Justin Houston was terrific tonight. He was one of the splashes, right? Devin Funchess was, but then he got injured. But the Colts team is built to win, right? And Brissett, instead of being the guy that can guide a tank, is a guy that can guide a 9-7, 10-6 team. And in the AFC right now, when you have, if you look at the teams with winning records, one of them is the Oakland Raiders. But other than that, it's Buffalo, New England, the Ravens, possibly the Browns after tomorrow night, and then the Texans, and then you as the Colts. There are almost as many winless teams in the AFC than there are teams with winning records. You look at the Bengals, you look at the Jets, you look at the Dolphins. This was not the year to tank. And good on the Colts for being competitive in a division that is not good at all. We saw Tennessee play. We saw the Texans had a bye today, and the Jaguars lost to the Carolina Panthers on the road. This is a winnable division for them, and good on them for taking advantage of it.
The Colts, it's very interesting, right? So they are one of those teams with a winning record. They have a negative point differential still. They're the only team other than your Oakland Raiders who has a winning record but a negative point differential. The AFC is so bad. So that's why I thought this was a huge game. I have 2 questions that I think will sum this up. Are the Colts in the running to be the 3rd best team in the AFC?
Yeah. I mean, we have to see how they play against Houston, because I think Houston is a team that can play really well. I joked about them having a bye today, but a team that can play really well like they did today, or they're a team that can lose 16-10 to Kyle Allen and the Carolina Panthers at home. So I think Frank Reich runs circles around Bill O'Brien. So that we have to see how they play there. But yeah, I mean, I think we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I think the Ravens are a team that's a little bit smoke and mirrors. They almost lost today to an FBS quarterback, and they needed a field goal to sort of shimmy its way through the crossbars for it to work. So yeah, I think it's the New England Patriots. I still think Buffalo's fake, and the Kansas City Chiefs, and then a bunch of teams vying for that 3rd spot.
And that was going to be my second question. So Colts, Texans, they play each other, on a neutral field. Like, who you just got to take one. Who are you taking?
I mean, I still think I'd take Houston, because I think coach, quarterback. I'd take quarterback, right? And I think Watson is so good, especially today. I mean. Yeah, but at the same time, like, Reich is that good, and I think Brissett's good enough. And Houston's defense, even though the Falcons didn't take full advantage of it today, is not very good. It's close. I side with the quarterback, though. I take Watson.
Yeah, I just can't.
And Will Fuller today had like 250 yards.
I can't.
And they didn't even have Kenny Stills.
I can't take Brissett against Watson. I really think that Frank Reich is that good that he can make up a lot of that difference. Yeah. And here's the tough thing. While Mahomes and the Kansas City offense, when at 100%, will destroy that Colts defense. I know they played great tonight, but they will. With Watson and the Texans, I do think it's a little harder because they are not quite as explosive. They don't have nearly as good of a protection scheme and don't have as many quick throws in that offense. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a little harder. I think, the Colts do present some challenges. The AFC is just, it's not very good. You've got a team like the Bills, right, who honestly, I think there's a lot of people out there that would say maybe the Buffalo Bills are the third best team in the AFC, and that tells you all.
Fundamentally disagree.
I agree. I disagree as well, but you would have people that would stand up and beat on a table for that.
The Titans versus the Bills today, 0 passes by either team traveled 20 yards in the air.
That game, Cairo Santos 0-4.
He did, yeah. And we didn't give this out. We talked about it because the spread wasn't widely available when we recorded on Thursday. We like Tennessee. Tennessee was driving for the go-ahead touchdown. They actually scored. It gets called back. Cairo Santos misses. They also had one of the worst play calls of the entire weekend where they, on a 4th and 4 from the 35, down 7, kicked a field goal. Santos missed by 40 yards wide left, I believe. That one was, as great as the Broncos game was, the cover and the outright win. Tennessee was bad, and in a week where we said there wasn't a whole lot available, we got some things to work for us, some things didn't. But that was an example of one that didn't.
Okay, that game was so bad.
Dude, it's brutal.
So Marcus Mariota is not good, and it's just. That's it. That's all there is to it. The Titans are a team that you know nothing about. They'll have these sporadically great performances against teams that aren't very good. And anytime you want to count on them, nope. Sorry.
I think we're starting to finally come to grips with how bad the Falcons are. But Tennessee's win, Tennessee had a bye last week. That's the only way I can attribute them winning by 2 scores against anybody. Houston had a bye this week. Yeah. Okay. Do we want to talk?
I think we should talk about the second big, important game. It was the game that the NFL decided, look, this game is so big, we're going to make you watch 10 games in the 1 o'clock slot, and we're going to put Joe Flacco's resurrection and the Cowboys-Packers mega ratings bonanza with Buck and Aikman as the only other game. And when we talked about this last week, I asked you, hey, do you really think Aaron Rodgers is, not the better quarterback? Because Dak Prescott's numbers are far superior this season, right? But to me, this was an example of the better quarterback getting points in this game. And the Tyron Smith injury was one that I thought was massive, and more massive really than the Devontae Adams one, because Dak Prescott is a guy who, in the perfect situation, when everything around him is in good shape, can deliver you top 5 quarterback numbers. But if anything goes off, it doesn't just go to average. Yeah. It goes to absolute disaster. Whereas with Aaron Rodgers, it's I actually think the fact that he's an underdog and Devontae Adams isn't there, he actually has to play better because he knows there's less margin for error. And I know people like to hate on Aaron Rodgers, but the guy is supremely talented. There's no arguing that. So this, to me, was a better quarterback getting points situation. The Packers go in there and really kind of steamroll them. Is that real?
I think the Dallas Cowboys not being very good, or not being the class of the NFL as people are talking about them, is real. And actually, Dak's numbers today, once you throw everything in there, he had 2 clean pocket interceptions. A couple of those were drops, right? Mm-hmm. He averaged 10 yards per pass attempt, 10.5, both pressured and not under pressure. Yep. I thought he made a lot of good throws, but it amounted basically from them coming back, right? They were
out of it real quick.
You look at Green Bay here. When you're looking at a team defensively that I think can put a lot of pressure on an opposing offense, in an NFC that's pretty flat, having a 4-1 record is a pretty real thing, I think. We talk about the Lions, but I think the Packers Rodgers, especially without his best player, probably his only player he really trusts in the passing game. Very impressive win for them, and I think you have to take them seriously in the NFC.
That game was so weird because the first couple of drives for the Cowboys, they looked really good offensively, and there was the drop that turned into an interception.
Yep.
And so all those things, like they certainly should have been closer. That game should have been closer. And the comeback attempt, the desperation comeback attempt, shouldn't have been a desperation comeback attempt. It really should have been we're down a score, maybe 10 points, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And instead it was desperation. So that's the bright side of it. And if I'm a Cowboys fan or I'm someone that put, have some futures on the Cowboys from earlier, that's my hope, right? They don't have Tyron Smith. That's a huge loss. And they still were able, Michael Gallup looked good. But on the flip side, they battle all the way back. They have this opportunity. And that's when Dak's bad interception shows up. And it's like, okay, now I don't know where I am because you battle all the way back, and then once you have this opportunity, you blow it. And is that just what's going to keep happening for the Cowboys, who had a good opportunity against Teddy Bridgewater in New Orleans and blow it?
Yeah, the defense was not good. Aaron Jones ran all over them. They had 12 missed tackles as a team. Only got 2 sacks and 4 hits. I mean, their defense, we talked about them last year after their game against the Saints. They gave up a significant amount of points in every game after that. Fast forward to this season, they play a Giants team with Eli still playing. They do okay. They give up a first drive touchdown, though. They play Washington, who's not very good, as we found out. Then they play Miami, right? All those things obscure our vision of them. Last week, their defense played okay, right? This week, they got exposed a little bit against basically an undermanned Green Bay team. I look at this and I say, okay, now you look at the NFC East. You have 2 teams who aren't very good. You have the Eagles, who are sort of starting to catch up to the Cowboys in terms of the poor record, right? Dallas has already played some of the really bad teams. They have one of the hardest schedules in the league after next week, where they play a Jets team that's not very good. I think, we predicted that the Philadelphia Eagles would win this division, and I stand by that. I still stand by the under for Dallas, all that kind of stuff, because, again, it was about the schedule, right? It was, and this was the easy part of the schedule, and frankly, they're probably going to get through it at 4-2, which is below expectation, I think.
Okay, so this is what I want to do. It's not hard to power rank the AFC, because you can literally say, well, the only 2 teams that matter are the 2 teams at the top. In the NFC, it is a different animal.
Yeah.
So let's try it. Who do you think the best team in the NFC is?
That's a really good question. I would say New Orleans, just because of the way that they've rallied around Bridgewater as a team. I think their defense is a legitimate defense, okay. and offensively they have firepower, and they've provided a good structure for Bridgewater.
All right, let's go top 5 teams in the NFC. You've got the Saints. Who are you going with after that?
I still think Philadelphia, when it's all said and done, is 2.
2, 3.
Okay. Well, the stock answer is whoever wins the NFC West. But if I have to choose who's going to win the NFC West, that's tough. But I still think the Rams.
Okay. So you're going Saints, Eagles, Rams.
Right.
4.
Again, this would be whoever wins the NFC North, but right now it'll have to be Green Bay.
Okay. And 5. I think I know who you might take.
Well, at 5 it's the 49ers, who I think are still better. I think who are better than the Seahawks, even though Russell Wilson played outside of his mind on Thursday. The Niners have that, sort of half game advantage here, so I'll go with that.
Okay. I'm not going to go with the Saints. I'm going to go with the Eagles. I think at full strength, the Eagles are the best team in the NFC. I believe that they have
relatively close there. Yeah.
I just think they have. I love Sean Payton. The Saints worry me a little bit because at quarterback, as great as Drew Brees is, Wentz has an X factor and has kind of the multifaceted offense with the tight ends, with the receivers, with the guys that can go deep. That I think worries me a little bit more.
Yeah.
The worry for me, of course, with the Eagles is coverage, but I don't think the Saints can cover really either.
See, I think we disagree there because and granted, coverage is so inconsistent, but I think at the top end, the Lattimores of the world, Eli Apple.
Lattimore's been awful.
But he was awful the first 5 games last year, and then he comes back and he ends up grading pretty well all on balance. Apple's played pretty well-ish. PJ Williams, like Marcus Williams, they have I think they're a pretty solid defense. It's defense.
Eli Apple's bad. I'm sorry.
Well, but the Philadelphia Eagles secondary,
when it's depleted, looks awful.
But
sure.
They're even at their best, they're relying on Ronald Darby, who's like pretty good. But Ronald Darby, I would take Lattimore over Darby.
Well, sure. But that's because he's younger, and
I like McLeod, and I like obviously Malcolm Jenkins, and I think we're splitting hairs here, but yeah, okay. I don't mind the Eagles being first.
I'm taking the Eagles first. Then I will go with the Saints, and I think those are your top 2, a la the Chiefs and the Patriots.
Yeah. Saints have been outscored by their opponents this year, by the way. Interestingly.
Well, look, they've had Teddy Bridgewater. That's just what he does. At 3, this one is really hard for me because I don't think there's a clear-cut third team, and the Rams are really giving me pause. But I think the Rams' spot in Seattle was really tough, and the fact that they should have won that game, I'm going to go with the Rams in 3rd. In 4th, I actually don't think the 4th best team in the NFC is in the NFC North. I think it's the Seattle Seahawks. And the reason being for that is that Russell Wilson might be the MVP right now.
Okay. My only concern is I think Seattle is winning with a lot of BS currently.
Yeah, they run the ball too much.
Well, and they've played base defense. They have Michael Kendricks covering guys like Cooper Kupp around the field, and so if you get any regression in Russell Wilson's play, and I think they're an 8-win team.
Okay. I'm just going to go and say I think they're better than the Cowboys because Russell Wilson's in a different planet than Dak Prescott.
Agreed.
They're better than the Packers because Russell Wilson's in a different planet than Aaron Rodgers. They're better than the Lions because rinse, lather, repeat is what I'm going to go with there. Yeah. And it's not like a lot of these teams have brilliant coaches, doing majestic things either. And then in 4, I'm going to go with the in 5, I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers. So I would go with Eagles, Saints, Rams, Seahawks, Packers.
So what do the Niners have to? So let's segue into Monday Night Football.
Let's do it
because the line moved. We didn't really have much in the way of an opinion on the game.
Oh, I had many opinions
Thursday,
on the game.
but now
our model didn't have many opinions.
Now that the number's at 5, there's a slight edge here on the Browns. Both ATS, even small on the money line here. What do the 49ers have to do in this game to enter that conversation that we just had?
They need to play a clean. Really, it comes down to Jimmy G for me. Their defense has been on the right side of some nice situations, right? They got Jameis week 1, and they got Mason Rudolph in their home opener. And it's like, I need to see. I don't expect that to continue. So what I need to see is Jimmy G avoid the what the heck was that throw?
Yeah.
And the offense do some things from a passing standpoint that are sustainable. Because right now they're running the ball at a ridiculous, rate, and it's paying off for them. And that's not a recipe for winning long term against teams that can put up points. So that's what I'd have to see. I think Jimmy G has been good, but he certainly hasn't been great. I don't think he's the better quarterback necessarily in this game. I don't think I know who the better quarterback in this game is. And
especially in the settings that they're in.
Especially in the settings that they're in. And this is a super tough spot for the Browns, so I understand why the line has gone to 5. If there was a gun to my head and you're like, hey, you have to watch the Falcons next week if you get this bet wrong, then I honestly think I would have to go with the Browns getting 5. But I don't feel great about that because I hate the spot. The spot for the Browns is awful. Huge win in Baltimore. They travel across the country. The Niners are super rested. They're super confident. And I don't know. Jimmy G's got it in him for sure.
Well, and the only rebuttal I have, I agree with you that the Niners are using up a lot of situational stuff here in one game. Bye week, they get an extra day off because of Monday Night Football. Cleveland traveling, there's not a lot of familiarity, right? Because it's an inter-conference game, all that sort of stuff. The thing that the Browns have, though, is I think that they are trending healthier, right? Greedy Williams went from being out to being questionable. Morgan Burnett, same. David Njoku's on the IR, so that's not good. But they are getting a little healthier. Defensively, they were really rough for a couple weeks. And on the Niners side, the Joe Staley injury, I think, will have a bigger impact in this game than it did in their previous game because Myles Garrett has been playing outside of his mind. That being said, I always get a little bit afraid about Kyle Shanahan when he has time to prepare for a defense because he's great. As far as an offensive mind, he's otherworldly. So this will be a really fun game. If you are an over better, like we don't necessarily have an edge on the over, but our number is bigger than the market number. So we do envision some sort of high scoringness in this game, which could be fun for a Monday night game. It's going to be the last good Monday Night Football game for quite some time. So just go ahead and enjoy it.
You're wearing your Boog shirt.
I am wearing my Boog shirt. So
by the way, if you're only listening to this and not watching this, you're missing out because us at midnight on Monday morning or past midnight in the morning is a sight to behold.
George, you're wearing what I normally wear, which is like a long sleeve.
Yeah, I've got it's cold. I got a bike home. Right. It's raining. It's cold. Fall's here.
And I'm wearing like a T-shirt, which is somewhat mostly what I wear also.
Do you want me to? Should we tell the folks what else you're wearing?
No.
I think we should. I think it's only fair that they know they're listening to analysis by someone wearing flip-flops,
thong sandals with socks because it's my feet, like you said, it's cold, and so it's more for speed and for comfort today.
What you're saying is that you're just you're of the Belichick mind, where it's all about function over form.
Yep, function over form.
And I'm here trying to accomplish both and failing pretty miserably. I'm really excited for this game though because I can't help it. I'm a Niners fan.
Yep.
And I'm going to try not to get too angry.
And I'm an honorary Niners fan, as our friend Oscar Aparicio once said.
Well,
on
you
Twitter.
Appreciate good football, and when you were growing up, they played some good football.
They're amazing, yeah.
So there's that.
Okay, now, speaking of what may not be good football, let's talk about some of the games next week.
Okay, before we do that, though, the lock of the week, Joseph Flacco, he got us there. There's some interesting things that happened. So we wrote up 2 picks.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is the Falcons. And I want to put the Falcons and the Titans, I want to put them into a capsule, a time capsule. And I want to send them back so far into the nether regions of time that they can never get back to where I currently am. Because if I ever have to wake up on a Sunday morning knowing that I am going to be rooting for Marcus Mariota and whatever the hell the Falcons team is, I'm just not going to be able to make it through the day. And that will never happen again.
And they got up, unlike the other time when we had them against Minnesota on opening day, they got up 7-0.
They gave up 100 million points in Houston. Houston, there was a problem, and it was not the Texans for once.
Well, let's talk about this because, again, like I would say, we've had good weeks with Green Line. We've had bad weeks with Green Line. But I think ultimately we have been getting pretty good value. If you just look at our printed picks this season, we've been 10-5, which is not bad at all. It's a pretty modest start, but we've been getting pretty decent line value. Of those 15 picks, there have been 3 where the number closed where we picked on Friday. There have been 3 where the number drifted away from us from the pick on Friday, and there have been, carry the 2, 9 that have moved in our direction.
One of which.
Both of which
was the Broncos.
Right. Both of which were this week, where we printed Atlanta +5. We talked about Atlanta +5 on the podcast. It ended up closing at 4, right? I thought drift out to 4.5, but back to 4. So it closed at 4. So there's some value there. So that pick is offering a little bit of value, even though it didn't work out, right? It was the same thing with week 1. Atlanta closed at 3.5, where the pick was at 4. So again, there's some value there.
But the Chargers, the Broncos one was the bigger one.
Yeah.
Because that one, there were a couple of reasons that we really like that. The first was, just looking at ELO, right, and the way that we say, hey, look, the score ended up this way, right, on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
But if you look at how the players played and the way the grading shook out, really the score was more like this. And the Broncos were like a 2-2 team.
Yep.
So there was that. There was Joe Flacco, Cortland Sutton, Emmanuel Sanders, that run game, all grading very well relative to the way they were perceived. And the fact that the Chargers were coming off of a win against a fake team in the Dolphins, playing at home to a Broncos team that fan base travels well.
Yep.
So all of those things conflating. And
the market agreed with us.
The market agreed. It moved a ton, right? It moves across 6.
Moved 2 full points and through 6. And Denver ended up winning outright. I think they were plus 200 by the time it was all said and done. And so that was a good pick. And it was our 4th win in the lock of the week out of 5.
It's because God likes donating to charity.
Right. So, but in any event, that's the good thing. It's a bad thing if you read our picks column on Sunday, because oftentimes those numbers are not available to you. But as they come out on Thursday, that's important. So
go get yourself a Green Line subscription, a PFF Elite subscription. You get Green Line, and that actually gets you great access to Eric at PFF_Eric for all of your questions.
We don't have like a Slack channel or anything.
At any time. Let's do this.
Okay, and this podcast has been pretty fun in terms of the guessing the line movements and everything. Okay, Thursday night football.
By the way, these are before games were played today.
Yep.
We guess what we think the lines should be.
And then we talk about what it is, and then we talk about where we think it'll move based upon what we know.
Take whatever it is.
So the Giants are going to New England. A rematch of the 07 Super Bowl, a rematch of the 2011 Super Bowl. Things have changed. Danny Dimes, I believe his passer rating today when under pressure was 4.9. Not 4.9 yards per attempt.
No, it's not good.
But the passer rating was 4.9.
Yeah,
he
bad.
struggled, understandably, against a really good Vikings defense at home. I guessed that the number would be minus 14.5. I sort of thought New England would play the way they played early against the Washington the whole game.
Okay,
they ended up turning it on a little bit at the end and being more impressive. And I thought the Giants would put up a little bit more of an effort against the Vikings.
So you're saying that you were wrong on both sides of it.
I was,
and that the line reflects that.
Not by much, but yeah.
Okay, I said 16.5.
And it is 16 currently. The Giants, if you want to bet the plus 16, it's minus 105. So as you can imagine, it is trending towards your direction at 16.5. So that's a good thing. Total on this game 44.5, which means
landslide. Well, this doesn't surprise me at all. And this is the reason I thought it would be over 16, and it will get over 16. Is the euphoria about Daniel Jones is slowly subsiding as we realize that there's a reason that maybe people didn't think he was consensus top 5 pick.
Yeah.
And that Bill Belichick does one thing particularly well, and that is absolutely eat rookie quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And Danny Dimes, which is the worst nickname I have heard in a very long time.
Well, he doesn't live up to it.
Just horrible. What a terrible nickname.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones is going to get the full Bill Belichick treatment because he's coming in here with a lot of fanfare. You know Belichick, and also, who's going to be a little motivated for this? Tom Brady.
Right, because he's lost 2 Super Bowls.
He's lost 2 Super Bowls.
And he's lost regular season games to the Giants in 2011 as well. And the Giants gave them a game to finish 17-0 in 2007.
This is a new kid on the block.
Right.
So I really think 16.5 is the number.
I brought up the total because on one hand, New England's only surrendered 1 offensive touchdown this season, right? On the other hand, a 16 with a 44.5, right? Like they're basically, if you are laying the points with the Patriots here, you're either taking the over or you are assuming that the Giants are held scoreless-ish, right? And those are tough to square, but to the degree that defense is predictable, and our friend Josh Hermsmeyer wrote about it this week, not particularly predictable.
538.com.
But the defense is not particularly predictable, but if you go on past performances, the Patriots are one of the best in the league right now, and the Giants, don't have a lot in the way of offensive weapons. So this is an interesting game. For me, it's Patriots or pass. And it's going to be this way anytime a really good team is playing one of the 5 really crappy teams in the NFL this year. I just can't back some of these teams.
By the way, the ball's on Josh to write that article before the Patriots defense plays the Redskins and the Giants is something. Now, it's what do I expect?
Yeah, he's a man of conviction.
That's something that's actually fairly consistent. Whereas defense is not. But they could look good against the Giants.
But at the same time, I was going to message Josh. This is really interesting. So when we were looking at player props, Alvin Kamara's rushing prop has basically stayed the same every single game this year. And if that's not a huge hey, defense doesn't matter signal, I don't know what is. Right? Because they play different defenses every week, but his rushing prop has been 66.5 every single week where I look. So kind of interesting. I think that's where he really came up with it. It's when you're projecting fantasy points, the parsimonious way is to look and say defense doesn't matter. And if you want to layer in second and third order stuff, that's where it does.
Yeah, the problem is that people on the internet read 200 and whatever characters, and that usually doesn't say it all. But I agree with you.
Unlike this week, the London game is going to be played in the morning, 9:30.
So, do you like that?
Yeah.
I hate that. Explain to me why that's good.
From a playing perspective, or from a viewing of the game perspective?
A viewing of the game perspective.
Well, I like it because I think if you're getting ready to watch football games and you just have one on in the background, that's kind of fun.
Okay.
I never really get intently into these games, but it does and I don't know what your preparation is when you get up and you look at the inactives and all that kind of stuff. You try to see, okay, well, how are these games? You maybe lay some bets down, all this kind of stuff. You look at props. Having a game on in the background is kind of fun.
I mean, I work out.
See, that's the difference between you and me, because even though I've lost some weight and I can beat you in basketball 1 out of every 3 or 4 games, I don't work out as intensely on the weekends as I do during the week.
Now, to be honest with you, I actually don't mind having the game on in the background when I work out. But I also like on Sunday to clean the house.
Yeah, sure.
The things that I don't want to have to worry about a football game being on.
Do you know what's great for that though? College football.
College football is not great for anything.
College football is a clean the dishes type event.
I agree.
Okay. So
Carolina, Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay dropped a game they should have probably won today. But
in predictable fashion.
In predictable fashion.
That line moved a ton, by the way. 6.5.
All the way down to 3 flat.
All the way down to 3 flat. It was a fairly popular pick in the Super Contest. By the way, the number 1 pick in the Super Contest was the Chicago Bears.
Hate to see that.
Yeah, it was a rough one. Luckily, did not have a great week in the Super Contest, but at least didn't have the Bears.
Yeah.
So I said that the Tampa Bay Jameis Winstons, I thought they were going to have a decent
Same here.
Show against the Saints, in large part because I just didn't think the Saints were going to really stop them, but they dominated defensively kind of up front. It was just...
And Jameis was off.
Yeah, it was weird.
And Teddy played pretty damn well.
Stop. I have Tampa Bay favored by 5.5 over the Kyle Allens, and that's going to be too high.
And I had Tampa at 3.5. This is Tampa's only nominal home game in this 5-game stretch. And that's a bad scheduling quirk for them.
Yep.
They are only favored by 1.5 currently. And in fact, it's juiced towards Carolina. Total on this game, 48.
That's ridiculous. Now, granted, I took 2 things into account. I thought that Tampa Bay was going to put up a very strong showing against the Saints, potentially win. I also don't think Carolina's that great, and thought there was a decent chance that they lose to the Jaguars. 1.5 though, Tampa Bay, Kyle Allen, I mean, was really bad today.
Yeah, he didn't. I went back and looked because I saw it was a high-scoring game, and we leaned on the over a little bit.
They won because Christian McCaffrey ran all over them.
Well, and they got a lot of short fields with defense. Brian Burns scored a touchdown.
Yeah, that's right.
They had they busted a long run when Jacksonville was trying to come back, et cetera, et cetera. I look back and Kyle Allen didn't play terrific, and it was strange.
No,
he was not good. I have to look back. I mean, it is troubling if you're thinking about, for us, we really like Tampa Bay's improvement defensively, the Shaq Barretts of the world. You were lamenting the fact, who got kicked out of that game? Was it
Carlton Davis?
Yeah, who's their best corner.
Yeah, and it was early on in the game.
It was early in the game. It sucked because Michael Thomas absolutely ate all game.
Yeah.
And it was down the field for Teddy, too, which is weird. And
I just hate that. I hate throwing a player out of that game unless he's like actually pulling out a weapon on the field. If it's not like an awful, terrible, horrible, clearly.
Unless it's some Richie Incognito or Vontaze Burfict stuff, just let him play.
Find him later. Suspend him if it ends up being bad. But what you do is you destroy the professional integrity and like competitive balance of that particular game that's already started, and I hate that.
Yeah. So we both think maybe. Well, in this line, I already see it at -1 somewhere. You think
I will be on the Tampa Bay side of that
all day
long. All day long.
And I think, the thing is bad Jameis hits you like a ton of bricks.
Yep.
But if you're an opposing defense, good Jameis hits you like a ton of bricks. And I still don't think Carolina is a terribly great defense. I think they struggle in coverage. I think their pass rush is fine. I think their linebackers are good. But I don't think, I think Tampa Bay completes the season sweep here.
Yeah. So, Ross Cockrell was not good today. James Bradbury is playing. I mean, he was not playing well for the majority of his career, but has had a little bit of a bounce back this year, which, we'll see if that
They
continues.
did shut down Houston, although Houston usually is the team that shuts down themselves. So, anyway, but this will be a fun game for our season win totals today. We did pretty well on the unders, right? Tennessee lost. Dallas lost. Chicago lost. Tampa Bay has a little bit of work to do to get to over 6.5. This would be a good step in that direction. Let's look at. Wow. Speaking of
poop, Washington and the Miami Dolphins. I have this as a pick'em because who the hell cares?
I had Washington at -4.5 on the road against Miami, and the market is between us here. The Washingtons are -3.5 in Miami. Miami coming off of a bye too. Total on this game 41.
Great. Do you think the Ukrainian whistleblower starts at quarterback?
He'll get better protection in one of those settings. I don't know.
What an awful game.
Okay, let's move on. Cincinnati, our Bengals, at 0-5.
Bad.
Travel to, is it M&T Bank Stadium to face the Baltimore Ravens, newly minted off of a overtime win to break their 2-game losing streak against the Division II quarterbacked Pittsburgh Steelers. I said the Ravens would be -10.5 going into the day.
I said -10.
And it is -12. The Bengals could not even beat the Arizona Cardinals at home. The Ravens do come out with a road win.
Yeah. I'm surprised by that, and here's why. The road win needs an asterisk, right?
They didn't even cover the spread. It had gone down to 3, so they pushed, but it was 3.5 early in the week. So
I'm not a huge Andy Dalton fan.
Yeah.
Obviously. But
showed some spunk today.
Sure. That's what you want to call it. But this Devlin Hodges guy sounds like a fullback. James Devlin.
Hodges also a
dude went 7 for 9. 7.5 yards per attempt. Didn't take a sack.
Hit Juju in stride on the fumble that basically lost the game.
Completed 3 passes, 10+ yards downfield. So that would worry me a little bit. And Andy Dalton's certainly better than that. And the Ravens escape with a win, whereas the Bengals, fought and lost. So I don't know. 10 just feels right to me. because I don't think the Bengals defense is all that good. The Bengals, the Ravens defense. So the Ravens go destroy Miami, and everyone gets super excited about them. But if you just look at the games after that,
their defense was the worst in yards per play coming into the week.
It's really worrisome, right? So what do you think about the Ravens? Like, are they the best team in that division?
No, the Ravens are, and this is why, like we talked about the Steelers, and obviously with their quarterback being out, it's all bets are off at this point. But going into the season, we had the Ravens as more of a 7 or 8 win team. Mm-hmm. Cleveland more of an 8-9 win team. Pittsburgh a 9-ish win team. I still believe those things about the Baltimore Ravens. Their defense is not very good. Their offense is extremely inconsistent, right? When you have a quarterback that struggles with accuracy, you are not going to be able to string drives together in an NFL like this one. This particular game, though, Cincinnati's defense is garbage. They gave up over 90 yards rushing to both
They're really bad.
David Johnson and Kyler Murray today. It looked like the Arizona Cardinals, to their credit, unleashed Murray a little bit in the ground game. So I don't see the Bengals being able to stop Lamar Jackson and company. They actually did a pretty good job doing it last year in the second meeting, but their defense is just not very good. Dalton, I just don't think can keep up. He threw one pass today over 20 yards down the field, and granted, it was the score that tied the game at the end to Tyler Boyd, but this isn't a good offense. They rammed Joe Mixon into the back of a terrible offensive line repeatedly all game, and then they asked Dalton to throw to a set of receivers for whom Tyler Boyd is the best, and he's decent, but they don't have any secondary options. So for me, I'm just laying completely off this game because I don't believe in either team. And even though I'm getting a ton of points with Cincinnati, like they have not shown a propensity to be able to hang with decent teams other than Seattle in week 1, and that was mostly a fluke, I think.
I would partition the NFL into 4 groups right now. There's the Patriots and the Chiefs. There's the NFC group of 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
There's I have no idea who these teams are. They could all beat each other group of probably 15. And then there's we could lose 60-0. And the Bengals are in the 60-0 group.
Yeah.
And so that is why I will not be wagering on them. Okay, we have a stretch now of a few games that are actually interesting and exciting.
So let's talk
about. Which one do you want to go to first?
Let's do this one's tough, but let's go Houston at Kansas City.
Okay, I like this one. So I think I may have. I don't know. I'm curious what you said here. I have Kansas City favored by 6.5.
We're close. I have Kansas City favored by 7.5. This was before today's games, where Houston absolutely had a bye week, and then Kansas City lost at home to a Colts team. I don't see the line out here yet. I think a lot has to do with how healthy Mahomes is, right?
Maybe that. Yeah. Let me see if I can find it somewhere. I would not. Mahomes finished the game, so there's no way he's not playing.
Sure.
That's why I would have expected a line here.
Yeah, it takes a while. I don't even see it. I don't see it on Pinnacle either. So, maybe.
I see -8.
-8. Okay, so both of us are sort of on the right track in that.
You got me there.
And that Kansas City is favored by a little bit more. Are you laying the points with the Chiefs in this spot?
Well, clearly not.
Shorter week.
I said 6.5. 8. Now I thought Kansas City would win this game, obviously against the Colts, and then I kind of saw this as being this is the first time the Chiefs have to face a real team here, and I'm obviously wrong. I just love Deshaun Watson as an underdog.
Yeah,
that is something that I want to invest in. And they had just this cupcake walk, so I don't think I am. Deshaun Watson today, by the way, was absolutely sensational. And he did so without, usually when Deshaun Watson has a big game, it's because DeAndre Hopkins, does too.
And he had a good game,
but it wasn't, sensational. I mean, it was the Falcons, so like it doesn't really count. But Watson was 4 for 5 on passes, 20-plus yards downfield. He had 350 yards from a clean pocket, 156.
He was
5 rating.
6 for 6 for 110 yards throwing to Will Fuller against Isaiah Oliver alone, and 14 of 16 for 217, 3 touchdowns throwing to Will Fuller in general. That is...
Dude, he was sensational. He didn't take a sack, which is nuts. How you don't sack Deshaun Watson one time?
Well, and they finally got some production in the passing game from the tight end. Darren Fells had 2 touchdowns on his only 2 targets.
Dude, how about the catch?
Dude,
I can't imagine watch football in the same way that we do, and so, lose their minds when these things happen. Yeah. But Darren Fells mossing a safety made the safety look like an undersized linebacker in the touchdown that probably broke the back. For this one, this has the potential to be the most exciting game of the weekend, I think. What's the total on this? Is there
you found the line.
I didn't see a total on it, unfortunately.
Okay.
What do you think the total will be?
Oh, man. I mean, so Chiefs have been – today was 56. That went way under. Prior, 54, right? We got the other day. And then – so it's been in the mid-50s for the last 3 games. I would say this one, you might touch 60 because Houston's defense is terrible.
I think it's getting to 60, and I want to know who's taking that under. Because –
well, they'll be spooked a little bit from this game, right? Because, everybody's been gravy training. Kansas City's over, and then this game doesn't even get half those points.
Is Hill –
he practiced some this week. There's a chance he'll play this week.
Man, he looks good.
Well, and the issue is Watkins, right? So Watkins played maybe a snap or 2 before.
What about Pringle, though?
I mean,
were you a Pringles guy?
No, my kids like Pringles.
You don't like Pringles?
No.
Really?
Nope.
I think you're the first person I met that doesn't like Pringles.
Yeah, it's okay.
What's your favorite snack food? You're on a long road trip.
It's the Gargettos. Those
those are good.
Rye chips. Yeah,
those
are my
are
favorite.
really, really, really good. You know what sucks is when you get the trail mix though, and you get the other crap.
Ugh, yeah, but
and
you can buy just the rye chips now.
Right. No, those are great. That's a really good call.
Also, just little carrots.
Baby carrots.
If I'm trying to be healthy,
squeeze a little lemon juice on them. No. You ever try that?
No.
You're not a sour guy. You're more sweet.
Okay, let's move on to another great game, which I think will be interesting, which is Philadelphia at Minnesota.
Good. You picked the right one. If you picked a different one, I was going to make us go to this one because this is a game that I am very excited for, and I am curious if you will be as excited for it as I am. I think that the Vikings will be favored by 3.
I said 2.5, and you are right. They are favored by 3. It's juiced a little towards Minnesota.
I cannot tell you how excited I am for next week on Thursday when we take the Philadelphia Eagles as our lock of the week. Because let me tell you what I envision. Step into my office here. Let me get on my crystal ball for you. Because Fletcher Cox is a big man. Fletcher Cox is hungry. And I think Fletcher Cox is literally going to pull up a table with a white tablecloth, get a really nice bottle of some vintage Chianti, and eat the entirety of the offensive line and Kirk Cousins in this game. And Carson Wentz is the exact type of quarterbacking the exact type of offense that I want in a game in Minnesota that they have to win. This is something that I am looking forward to.
You are excited for this game.
Do you agree with my sentiment here? I think the Eagles are the best team in the NFC, so obviously I am pro Eagles.
Well, and anytime I can take the other side of the Vikings playing a good team, I will try. The only issue here is the Vikings under Zimmer have been very, very, very good at home, and this has crossed some of these good teams last year. Now, Green Bay didn't finish the season as a good team, but they still had Aaron Rodgers last year. They should have probably won the Saints game last year. Turnovers were really the thing that turned that game around. So that's my only pause here. That being said, I am in no universe laying the points of the Vikings in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, especially if it gets out to 3.5.
You've already called. I think Wentz is playing so much better than people think. He was our highest graded quarterback going into the week. He had 12 drops, which is among the league's highest, if not the league's highest. He's starting to get healthy. I mean, the fact that they're like above 500, having a couple like sort of close losses without Deshaun Jackson, right? Like they have all these excuses that other teams would make. And the thing about it is the fact that they get 33% more downs than everybody else, right? And it's, it's really unfair of the league to give it to them, but they just do that. And so they can be down a couple players and still run circles. The Vikings still here are, kind of in many ways dragging their knuckles, running the football extremely well today. Dalvin Cook's the best running back in the NFL. We're going to be talking about, as I tweeted the other day, we're going to be talking about, hey, can you win with a defense and a running game in today's NFL? I'm all over the Eagles, I think, here. Yeah,
I'm curious if Deshaun Jackson comes back. I mean, obviously they weren't going to play him against the Jets because who the hell would play him against the Jets?
He's a player that can really hurt a defense like the Vikings because their corners are of the big and physical variety, and Deshaun Jackson's of the I'm going to run by this nonsense variety. So we saw Rhodes again hurt today. Mike Hughes it looked like he had a nice game playing nickel. Mackenzie Alexander's out, so they're lacking a little bit of depth, much like the Eagles are in the secondary. So I'm glad that you like this game. I like it as well. Let's talk then about another game that should be pretty close, which is Seattle at Cleveland. Now, I know Cleveland hasn't played yet. Seattle played a while back. This, again, you're looking at Cleveland's schedule as being like, this kind of sucks. You got Cleveland, one fewer day of rest. You have Seattle 3 additional days of rest. Seattle does go on the road, though. They play a noon game. I believe it's an early game. So there's some things competing here, but I guess that Cleveland would be about a 2.5 point favorite here at home.
That is what I said as well.
And I don't think we have a line because of the game.
My boy Golf Odds might have one here. Cleveland 2.5.
Well, there we are. So we're apparently sharp there. I don't really think sharp. There's a shrap. I don't really think that there's a good side here. It's going to be really interesting again because Cleveland's defense is the type that can make Russell Wilson have to run around and make brilliant plays. But as you saw the other night, he's capable of doing that. But at the same time, we have so little data on Cleveland. We've seen them for 4 games. They've been decent for 1 game. They had a bye week against the Jets, and they've been bad for 2 other games. So it'll be really interesting to see where this moves after tomorrow night. Or tonight, Monday morning.
Is Russell Wilson... Remember we were talking about the quarterbacks you'd want to win, tomorrow if you had a game. And I think we were both Mahomes, Brady, and then I think you had Breeze and Rivers and Wilson and then Wentz. And I had Wilson, Wentz, and then or Breeze kind of tied there with Wentz and then Rivers. Has Wilson put himself closer? Like how close is are you saying, hey, there's this giant chasm between Mahomes and Brady and Wilson? Because I don't actually think I feel that way anymore.
No, I mean, I was planning on we didn't get to talk after the Thursday night game. Wilson has been this guy the entire time.
I agree.
And we see it manifest itself more loudly in games like Thursday night where it was needed. And it was it was 2 sigma above his average, right? But his average is pretty high.
Pretty darn good. And he does it to save his coach, right? Pete Carroll, that 4th and 1 decision was one of the worst decisions we saw this week. And, we'll write about it tomorrow. It was just like, what are you doing, man? But it gives Russell Wilson the opportunity, right? That 10-point swing gives Russell Wilson the opportunity to...
Unbelievable.
Go out and make some spectacular throws and end up winning that game, even though they probably still shouldn't have.
Well, and, he doesn't have the clunkers that he used to have, right? Like I remember in 2016, he had a few games where he was literally unplayable, right?
I mean, he did have that Chicago game last year.
Yeah.
That wasn't great.
Yeah, I mean, but they're fewer and further between, right? And they do protect, like in that sense, they sort of protect him against bad variance. But honestly, you need Wilson to be so good to win with that team that who gives a crap if he's average or -2 sigma, because you're losing anyway in both of those cases.
He didn't have a shot to begin with.
Yeah. So, but no, I mean, he's, if he gets to win an MVP, that'd be great, because honestly, he's been this good for this long, and let's see him get first team All-Pro or second team All-Pro for the first time in his career.
Definitely deserves.
He deserves a lot of recognition for being this good.
I couldn't imagine a guy as good as Russell Wilson playing a career and not winning an MVP. Now, here's the thing.
So saturated now.
For Mahomes, he's got to beat last year's. It's the returning thing, right, or the repeating thing. He's got to beat last year's numbers, or else it opens the door for someone else. And Brady's not having that great of a season. Breeze is hurt, right? Luck is gone. Rodgers is not having that great of a season. Prescott and Jackson are out. Really, if the Seahawks are at the front of that division, it's the Seahawks. It's Russell Wilson, who's the guy there. So
if they get a first-round bye, he should be in consideration for the MVP, especially, and I think this is one of the reasons Mahomes was, in addition to his outrageous statistics. But when the dust settles on Seattle, people are going to realize they have a bad defense. People are going to realize that their coach, in many ways, holds them back. And their supporting cast is basically a late round pick from Oklahoma State, Tyler Lockett, and a bad offensive line, and Will Dissly, right? And that's going to emerge as, oh, look, this guy's doing it all by himself. And that's in many ways what people saw with Mahomes, in the sense that, oh, look, Kareem Hunt's, all of that, all those narratives. But it's a good conversation to have. Okay.
Let's stay in the same division. San Francisco. This should be the Sunday night game. It's not, unfortunately. But the Niners, who may or may not be undefeated at this point, will be playing in Los Angeles against the Rams. I said the Rams would be 5.5-point favorites.
And I said the Rams would be 2.5-point favorites.
Wow.
Yeah. My reasoning for this is that I think people are going to overreact to Thursday night, and I think San Francisco will win, and relatively convincingly. Well,
Rams are 4-point favorites.
Right, okay, now. So you're more right than me. So what does we talked about this already? But what does San Francisco have to do for this to be more like my number than your number?
Probably win by 10 plus.
Yeah, I agree.
Who's the better quarterback in this game?
Jimmy G.
I don't disagree with you, and he's getting 5.5 points.
Sounds like an opportunity.
Yeah, it sounds like an opportunity. And this is a game where the coaching, I think McVay has I want to give McVay a shout out and admonish him at the same time, which is his second half adjustments, I think, have been very solid, right? They, in that game against, Seattle, should have won that game. And that is something that I don't think we saw last year. But I just don't understand the lack of aggressiveness, or the lack of logic on fourth downs. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's so weird. And Shanahan, honestly, is basically the same person, right? His offense is tremendous. He is going to scheme you to death, but he's also going to punt and kick field goals left and right. And it's what is the point?
And there was a point at which last year, I know, again, we talk about our friend Oscar, but he was saying, well, it's part of the tank, right? That they weren't.
I was fully on board with that, by the way.
But now when they're actually trying to win, it's a little annoying. Here's a question. Doug Peterson is X% of the play caller of these two men.
20%.
Okay, I was going to say more like 70, but he's still a great deal below these guys in terms of play for play, scheming, all that kind of stuff.
I also think a lot of the good Doug Peterson stuff is Andy Reid.
Sure, but my point is the same as yours.
20 is probably a little lenient.
My point is the same as yours. Whereas I don't think Peterson, from a play for play perspective or from a scheme perspective, is great. I think he's good enough, and he gives his team a better chance to win by simply playing game theory way better than these two guys, right? Whereas McVay and Shanahan have really changed the way the game of football is played in different ways for the two of them, and yet they still leave points on the board. how much more of an advantage is it just for you to play game theory better? Couple times a game than to grind out small percentages of points on a play-for-play basis. It's really alarming because these two guys could run the league if they actually
just took advantage of this. It's fascinating. Does the winner of this game win the division?
Yeah. I don't. I like Seattle. I think as a team, I've always kind of rooted for them a little bit. Wilson's a great story and everything, but I just don't like them. I don't like their defense. I don't like their supporting cast.
I don't like the angst that you have.
I don't like how much they run the football. Like there's so many things I don't like about the Seahawks fundamentally that I just don't think they're going to be there at the end.
This is the game that when you pay Jared Goff that amount of money, he's got to win. But if the Niners win this game...
Same with Jimmy G, though.
No, he's an underdog by 5 points, 4.5, 5 points, whatever it is. But what I'm saying is if he does win this game, then you go, every dollar I spent was well worth it. Now, if he loses it and it's a close game, you're like, well, look, we're still a year away.
Yeah.
But for Jared Goff, like this is the game you've got to win. Are there any good games left? New Orleans, Jacksonville.
Let's talk about that game because the line here is, and actually this is a game. I actually didn't see this one. So you're gonna have to give us your guess.
What did I say here? I had Jacksonville at home as a 2.5 point underdog. What do you think about that?
Well, I actually don't know now that I had for some reason left it off, but it's a pick'em with a little bit of juice toward minus 115 towards the Saints, minus 105 to Jags.
Can you explain this to me?
I can't. That's the thing. I told you how much I like the Saints as a team. Obviously, my feelings for Bridgewater
start here.
Out in the open.
I, unlike you, am an unbiased Teddy Bridgewater evaluator.
You are.
I, along with you, am a Gardner Minshew supporter. Right?
Yeah. I mean, who isn't?
Exactly. And I don't think there's a big difference in terms of the quarterback here in this game.
Okay. I'll grant you the respect.
Do you think there is?
I mean, they both have noodles.
I would say that most people would say there is a decided advantage for the Jaguars from a quarterbacking standpoint in this game.
Really?
Yes. You're surprised by that? Are you kidding me? Have you watched the Saints play with Teddy Bridgewater, a quarterback? It's absolutely disgusting.
Well, see, we talked about this last week. I claimed that
it's horrific. Look,
I claimed that Bridgewater's throwing down the field was a situation of omission and not commission, right? That he wasn't throwing down the field because he simply didn't have to. Mm-hmm. And the game against Dallas was a big egg on my face because they should have thrown downfield because they did not win that game decidedly. Today against Tampa Bay, he was 4 for 4 for over 120 yards, throwing the ball over 20 yards in the air.
Yes, because
he had to.
No, because the Bucs secondary was taken away from them by the referees. So,
no, but my point is that it's not that he can't do it; it's that he wasn't doing it. And whereas I think as weak as Bridgewater's arm could be, I think that Gardner Minshew has a worse arm. And then more to the point, I think Minshew's great. I think Minshew's going to be a starter in this league. The Jacksonville offense is nowhere near as talented as the Saints offense.
I mean, that's the bigger.
And to me, that's the bigger part of the handicap than just the quarterback isolated, right? Because Bridgewater, you say whatever you want about him, he got the ball in he got the ball in the best player on the field's hands a number of times today.
Yes, because he was running wide open across the field at all times.
Come on. I mean,
yes.
The throw. Okay.
That mimic of the throw was way more aggressive of a throwing motion than Teddy Bridgewater's actual motion.
One of these days, we'll have to grind the film and watch some Bridgewater, and one of us will.
Teddy Bridgewater's passes remind me of like a paper bag floating through the air,
like in beautiful. What was it? The one with Kevin Spacey. American Beauty or whatever.
Yes.
It's just a bag. But yeah,
That's what it reminds me of.
okay. Well, but you like the Saints here if you're not having to lay any points.
The pick'em is ridiculous to me.
Yeah, it's not on some of these places I'm looking. So maybe there's like a, I don't know, that Teddy Bridgewater under 6.5 wins as a starter prop is starting to look bad. If he has to start 7 games and he's 6-0, how much?
Well, but Breeze was throwing a small football today.
Oh, good. Andrew Luck threw a small football last year too, and look where he is. Okay,
so that's good. Thank God. I even forgot about that prop. I would have put like my savings on it too.
Here's one. Okay, like let's just glaze over a couple here.
Yeah, let's run through
Washington at Miami.
We already did that one.
Okay, we already did. Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, sorry. I wanted to do Atlanta so little that
you wanted to do Washington and Miami more.
Atlanta at Arizona. Where are you?
I pegged this perfectly because I foresaw when I was in the airport this morning and I did these and I thought to myself, what's the most likely outcome for the Falcons today? And I realized it was an absolute train wreck, a dumpster fire that I would be clawing my eyes out. And sure enough, I was.
And you had similar opinion of the Bengals and hence
I have the Cardinals as a pick at home.
I had Cardinals at plus 4.5. I was a little bit more optimistic, and it is right smack dab between us. Cardinals are 2-point dogs at home, and you would bet people are going to bet Arizona money line all week, right? The same reason, like people are going to, and the Falcons are going to win by 21.
Yep,
and that's how it's going to happen.
Is Dan Quinn the coach of the Falcons?
I was just going to say that.
Should he be?
Have they ever fired a coach during this? I'm trying to think.
Not that I can remember.
Yeah, because, Bobby Petrino left them. Did they fire Mike Smith I think they fired him after the season was over.
Thought it was the day after, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to ask that because, like Dan Reeves, he left, I believe, after a certain. So,
what do you think? What do you think they do?
I don't think they do. I think they honestly, now that they're 1-4, again for the second straight year, I think that they see if they can't circle the wagons. I could be wrong, and I think it would be I don't want to call for anybody's head, but it's clearly an issue that it's the same shit with the Falcons every time.
It's awful, man. It is so awful. Can we make a pact? We're just never
entertaining it again. I mean, I thought it was a solid move in the market, move with us, but whatever. Okay, here's one I kind of like actually because.
Who's the next coach at the Atlanta Falcons? It's an exciting job.
Yeah, well, so they normally zigzag, right? So it
has to be an offensive.
It has to be an offensive guy.
There's just no way. Because poor Matt Ryan is
Zach Robinson.
Love it. I'm here for that. Zach Robinson, future coach of the Atlanta Falcons. Let's get it started. We need to start that rumor tomorrow.
What about
Eric Bieniemy?
No, Riley.
Yeah, here's the kind of...
It's a Southern boy, Texas, Georgia.
Here's the bad thing. You know what I think the bad thing is? I don't think he'd take it.
You get to coach Julio and Matt Ryan and that defense. And
you know what I think's gonna happen? I think we're right that the Cowboys aren't that good, and I think Lincoln Riley gets the...
How bad do the Cowboys have to finish for Garrett not to make it through the offseason? 9-7?
Oh, no. I think they can legitimately make the playoffs and win a game, and he can get canned. Yeah. Because the expectations are just that high. Tennessee at Denver.
Yeah, that was what I was going to go to. I thought it would be a pick'em.
I had Denver favored by 2.5.
And that's where it is. And...
You know why? Because Marcus Mariota is absolute butt.
And here's
trash. And that whole team is just weird, man. You're missing 4 field goals. You're down 7, and Mike Vrabel is kicking a 50-yard field goal with a guy that hasn't come close.
The worst decision of the weekend.
What was that? What are you doing?
Dude, Josh Allen, like I said in that game, no one threw a pass over 20 yards on field. Josh Allen was booty all game.
Do you understand that you only get 3 points if by some miracle this kicker actually makes the kick?
I mean, unbelievable. But if you look, what I like about this game is the narrative about Denver's defense. People are going to be like, oh, they had no sacks again today against Phillip Rivers. They did have 18 hurries and 3 hits, right? Like their defense, process-wise, Von Miller had 7 hurries today. This is going to be like a 7-sack game for Denver, and everybody's going to be like, oh, their defense is back. You know, all these guys, Derek Wolfe playing out of his mind. Von Miller's finally, being the player that we pay him to be, blah, blah, blah. And it's going to talk about sort of like the precariousness of, sacks and pressures and all that kind of stuff. So, because Mariota is going to be a statue in that pocket all day.
So do you think then that this game against the Chargers was a turning point for the Broncos?
No.
Or do they come back, down to earth?
I don't think they come back down to earth. I think honestly, Denver, we were watching, Philip Lindsay's, I was a little bit like bearish on him because of all the yards before contact. But man, does he like run the ball. I mean, like in terms of like speed, like he just hits the hole extremely fast, and that offense depends upon him a lot. So Royce Freeman is also good. Like I think like if Flacco is in rhythm and they're fairly like when he's in rhythm, that opens up decent stuff for their offense. And Cortland Sutton was great. Like I think even if we get a back to average performance from Denver, it's more than good enough to beat this nonsense.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I don't think the Titans can cover Sutton and Sanders. I should say Sanders and Sutton because that's the order in which they should be referred.
Yeah.
I think 2.5 is a little low. A game that no one cares about. The Dallas Cowboys are playing in New York against the New York Jets.
And
your thoughts?
I was dumb and said Jets because I think Darnold's playing in this game. I said Jets plus 10.5.
That's exactly what I said.
So and that line's not up because Darnold, right? I mean,
who cares?
Yeah. Okay. Pittsburgh at the Chargers. This is Sunday Night Football. Going into the day, this is just an exercise because it doesn't look like Mason Rudolph's going to come back from the dead and play this game.
Hopefully he's alive.
So I said Chargers would be favored by 6.5.
I said 5.
Okay, I think it's probably out towards double digits now if they're playing Matt Flynn at quarterback.
Yeah, my reasoning was that this Pittsburgh fans travel better than any other, and this would legitimately be a home game for the Steelers.
I think honestly their chance of winning would have been better if the Chargers had won today.
Yeah.
But I think the Chargers losing is sort of a wake up call, and to the degree that that matters.
I expected the Chargers to win just by less than 6.5.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's really anything that interesting to talk about here except for how are the Chargers going to somehow get themselves into like a possible playoff scenario in week 16 and 17? Because that's going to happen. But right now it doesn't look super good, right? Their defense is incredibly bad.
Yep.
And their offense, Keenan Allen's so good.
He was shut down today.
But man, there's just something that doesn't click with it. And I don't know if it's Phillip Rivers. I don't know if it's the offensive scheme. But it doesn't feel like it has a whole lot of diversity. And
and
I say that from a passing standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I just think their offense tries too hard. They gave the ball 12 times to Melvin Gordon, who got basically 8 yards before contact today, broke 1 tackle, right? They force-fed him the ball in the run game. Yep. And then they're like, look, Austin Eckler's great, right? We need to keep giving him the ball. So then they reserved the passing game for that, which he caught all 15 of his targets, but just for 86 yards, -7. So he basically averaged negative half a yard ADOT, right?
Not great.
And like those targets are taken away from other people, right? So Keenan Allen only gets 6 targets, right? That's not a good thing for your offense. And if you only turned them into 18 yards. Like they need to, that's the thing about having running backs that are not superstars, that have like low self-esteem, because the offense can sort of run the way it wants to run, and you don't have to earmark plays for these players, right? Like that's the point. And unfortunately, I think the Chargers tried too hard to incorporate both backs into the game plan. And while they're both good players, that does not necessarily make for good offense. And we saw that today.
I couldn't agree more. This game obviously not as exciting with
and certainly not lined yet.
Devlin Hodges. Monday Night Football, is that right? Detroit, Green Bay.
And I had Green Bay.
This is actually a good game.
Yeah, that's true. I had Green Bay at home, favored by 4.5.
I said 3.5.
And it is Green Bay -6. I mean, this is LO.
Bring it. Bring me all of the Lions tickets.
This is LOW material.
I need them all. All of them. Give me every single one. 6?
Yeah. Right, because we're getting a similar, although they're not at home, but we're getting a similar idea with the Niners. You're getting the 15 days off. You're coming off of a loss where, it's not as impressive now that the Chiefs went and blew one against Indianapolis, but a pretty good loss, right?
You can actually go make these bets right now. By the way, the reason we do this is so that right now, if you've made it through all 1,700 million minutes of this podcast,
you could go bet
you could go bet this right now. So Monday sucks, but sucks a little bit less when you're able to make this happen.
Yeah. So in fewer words than maybe other games, I think Detroit's the right side here, and I'm really interested to see what Greenline says, because if and I know this game was at home, but I don't think Detroit was 6-point dogs at home, 6.5 to Kansas City, and I understand that Lambeau Field is a thing, but
6?
They should not be 6-point dogs flipping over to Green Bay here.
So, is this what is this?
This number was close to. This number was 5.5. I actually looked back at the movement.
Yeah.
This number hasn't really budged much.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I was just about to ask, what if Green Bay loses to
Well,
Dallas?
I think if they get blown out, it's different.
No, but loses by 5.
I mean, I think it's moved 1/2 point in the direction of Green Bay.
Better quarterback getting points.
Wow. Okay.
Detroit +6.
Let's do it.
I need it to show up on this stupid website that I can place a wager on. I've been doing really good. So here's what I do. And after we close this podcast, I get on my bike and try not to die on the way home.
Mm-hmm.
And when I get home, laying in bed, I just showered. So you get that little adrenaline rush after the shower. And I'm sitting there just open the phone. You get a little Instagram scroll, and then you're like, oh, you know what?
I can play some bets.
I can place bets. And then I go on there, and I'm like, oh, this is ridiculous. Eric and I just talked about this. And I've been doing nicely. And the great thing about that is now I don't do any betting other than the lock of the week, basically, for the rest of the week.
I think that's probably the smart way to do it.
I think it's very sound. So you're welcome. This was fun, as usual. We will be back on Thursday. Peace out. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.